What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Fight Scene. On this channel, we talk about things that are happening in the world of MMA and combat sports. My name's Drew, and today I want to talk about the fights that happened last night at UFC 226. Let's just get right into it. I mean, wow, what an event. I was super happy. I watched it outside with some friends. We had a fire going, threw it on a projector screen, and I just had a fantastic time. Man, I didn't see some of those fights going the way they did. Some of them I did expect to go the way they did. You know, most notably, I did think that Stipe would win, but I didn't think he would win like that. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. But let's start with some of the fights on the undercard. The one that stood out to me the most was Paulo Costa versus Uriah Hall. I did expect Paulo Costa to win. We did see the kind of Uriah Hall that I'd say brought the fight to him and could have easily won this fight. You know, you hear Dana White talk in the post-fight press conference that's the Uriah Hall that he thought was going to exist coming out of the Ultimate Fighter. And so it was a good Uriah Hall, and he did look really good in that fight. But to me, Paulo Costa is the future. And I'm not saying that he is ready for certainly not ready for a title shot or even for like that #1 contender fight. But I think we've seen now that he is ready for a top 10 opponent. He's ready for the next level. They've done a good job at kind of building him up. He's proven that he's ready. He's going to be a massive star. He's got the, Dana White says he's got the physique. And he's just, just a model. Looks great, fights great, big. I mean, what's not to like? Finishes fights, never goes to decision. Most of his fights end in the first round. There's nothing not to like. And Brazil is looking for that next big star, and I think that they have it in Paulo Costa. That was an awesome fight. Now, I had purchased the pay-per-view through my PlayStation, and my friends that were here, there was no way to watch the prelims. So I actually had this really terrible stream of that. It was like running at 10 frames per second. It was pretty bad, but we could see what was going on, and even though it was a little bit choppy. And I was super impressed with Paulo Costa. I've been saying that for a little while. And, you just look at his record. Up until the Johnny Hendricks fight, he hadn't been out of the first round ever on his professional record. So, barring a split decision in the Ultimate Fighter, he's looked fantastic. I didn't actually see that fight. I just see that happened. And I'm super excited to see what's next for Paulo Costa. Love that. And we get into the main card. One of the big surprises of the night for me was Gokhan Saki versus Roundtree. I'll say that I'm not surprised that Roundtree won. And I would have been, but after reading a lot of your comments on my breakdown video, a lot of you were saying sort of I'm taking Roundtree a little bit lightly. So I'm not necessarily surprised that he won. I'm surprised that he did it in basically a kickboxing match. There's a lot of ways that you could beat Gokhan Saki. A straight kickboxing match is not one of the ways that I think most of us would expect for him to lose the fight, given his history as a K1 champion. Now, I was talking to somebody at Muay Thai. I was at Muay Thai class on Friday night, and we were just talking. I was sparring, and I just did so bad. I'm really bad at Muay Thai, right? I've been sparring not very long, and I have a lot to learn. But we were talking about ranges, right? Because I was saying that a lot of the time I'm evading too much, or I'm keeping too far of a distance. And we were talking about Muay Thai and kickboxing, and he was saying, MMA is a lot different because in MMA you have to worry about the takedown, you have to worry about different kinds of clinches, and just the ranges between an MMA fight and a kickboxing fight. They're different. There's different things at play. There's different defenses that you need to be worried about in MMA that you wouldn't have to be worried about in kickboxing, and potentially that could affect him. Plus, you have 4-ounce gloves, and I've said this a lot about Alistair Overeem. If you watch Alistair Overeem in K1, the way that he holds his guard in shells when absorbing strikes is really in favor of a larger glove size. And with 4-ounce gloves, they can slip through a little bit more easily. Now, I'm not saying that that's what happened to Saki. It was a straight cross that got him, and so it's possible that maybe he thought he could defend against that. But yeah, just Roundtree looked incredible. All power to him. And let's see what's next for him. It's Gokhan Saki's not like this flash in the pan fighter like a CM Punk or a James Toney or somebody like that, where it's one loss and they're out. I mean, he has a history of combat sports excellence, and I expect that we'll see more from him. He is 1-2, I believe, but I still want to see what he has potentially in the UFC, and certainly in MMA. If maybe he does need to go to a different fight league, I'm not sure, but I still want to see more of Gokhan Saki in the UFC personally. Then we move on to Michael Chiesa versus Anthony Pettis, and I absolutely love this fight. Man, I predicted Chiesa to win. And after the weigh-ins, I really thought Chiesa would win. A, because he missed weight. And most fighters that are missing weight in 2018 are winning their fights. But also, they do not look like they're in the same weight class. Chiesa looked so much bigger than Anthony Pettis. And so I thought for sure he would win. But I've kind of come along where I really don't like Michael Chiesa. I'm not a fan of his. I don't like his attitude. I don't like his antics. I didn't like how he was talking about, how Conor cost him a title shot and all this stuff. Look, Kevin Lee cost Michael Chiesa a title shot, not Conor. So there was just this attitude, and then he misses weight, and then at the weigh-ins, he's just really arrogant, acting really arrogant. It's like, you missed weight. I'd like you to check some of that arrogance after you miss weight. Even during the fight, Anthony Pettis lands a kick. He waves his finger at him. And just stuff that I don't love out of fighters. I don't know where it came from. Michael Chiesa wasn't always that way coming out of The Ultimate Fighter. I think that was the last season that I ever watched. I was a fan of his. And somewhere along the line, he's really soured me with his arrogance. And I was really, even though I'd picked him, in sort of my online credibility might be on the line, I really wanted Pettis to win this fight, and I was super jazzed when he did. I didn't think that he would be able to submit Chiesa. I thought that Michael Chiesa was the better grappler, but I was wrong there, at least in an MMA context. And I loved that, he wags his finger at him and then immediately gets dropped. To me, it's just justice. I loved everything about that fight. I said in my breakdown video before the fight, it will really depends on what kind of Pettis shows up. And he said, look, I'm done with trying to avoid the takedown. I'm going to kickbox people. If they take me down, I'm going to use my jiu-jitsu. Sweet. I'd love to see Pettis, I'd say 2.0. Anthony Pettis, what, 6.0 at this point? I'm an Anthony Pettis fan. I'm on board. Get me that Wheaties box or whatever. I want to see him win fights. I loved what I saw. I hope we see more of it. And hopefully we see a title run for Anthony Pettis. I would love nothing more than to see that. Looked great. What an awesome fight that was. That's the kind of fight you want on a pay-per-view. Loved it. Super excited for Anthony Pettis. And we'll go from there. Then we had Paul Felder versus Mike Perry. It's a good fight. It was a war. Paul Felder hurt his hand, potentially broke his whole arm. I'd like to see that fight again, to be honest. It was a good fight to watch, and I'd love to see a healthy Paul Felder in that fight. I'm happy for Mike Perry because I really thought this might be his last fight in the UFC. I thought he would lose that fight, and then they would probably he wasn't doing so well, so I figured that maybe that would be the end of the road for him. It looked great. Looks like he's maybe changing his girlfriend or former girlfriend as his coach. Probably the right move, and looked great. Good fight. Bloody fight. If you had friends over that weren't big MMA fans, sort of casual fans that were coming to watch it, they might have been turned off by that a little bit, but yeah, loved it. Mike Perry looked great. Then we had this disaster. That was Francis Ngannou versus Derek Lewis. Oh my gosh. Who thought? Okay. I had some friends over and I was talking about how good I thought this fight was going to be. But I did sort of qualify it to say sometimes when it's like when the commentary before a fight is don't blink, people are like, don't blink. There's a lot of times in UFC history where those fights end up being really bad. Your anticipation is so high. And a lot of the time when you just assume, I can't really think of another one right now, where everybody just said, don't blink, and it just ends up being a terrible fight. Now, what I don't understand is, I didn't anticipate it to be that bad, though. I thought I said in my video, if it went to decision, it would be really boring and crappy, but I think I called it a whale flopper. And it wasn't that. But what I don't understand about that fight is, how did Francis Ngannou think he was going to win? That's what I don't understand. So Derek Lewis had back spasms. So I can understand why maybe he didn't go for that takedown harder, didn't exchange more. You could see he was trying to go for the takedown, but he was having back issues. What did Francis Ngannou think was going to happen? You have to throw. You have to throw strikes, or wrestle, or do something offensive to win a fight, and he did none of those things. I'm confused by what he thought he was doing. I think that one judge gave it to Francis Ngannou. What were they watching? What were they watching? He didn't do anything. He did nothing. Neither fighter really did anything, but Ngannou did even less. And so I just don't understand. I don't understand what his strategy was there. I think he wants to be a sniper and just look for that one shot. And I said in my breakdown video for that fight that this was a really telling fight for Ngannou. I felt like he had been kind of exposed. And I don't use that term lightly because I hate that term. I felt like he had been kind of exposed in the Stipe fight. And then this fight was going to tell a lot about who Francis Ngannou is. Not a good night for Francis Ngannou. And just looked awful. Looked awful. I was so confused. I was so confused by that fight. Not because I was bored, because I was still waiting for something to happen the whole time, all 15 minutes. I wasn't bored necessarily, because I was like, what are you doing? Like, you have to throw a jab to win. You have to throw at least something. And he did nothing offensive that entire fight. You can see Derek, he was trying to get a bit of a takedown there a couple times. And yeah, terrible fight. Who would have thought? I mean, we've seen it before. It goes to show you anything can happen in MMA. They had a lot of respect for each other's power. I get that. But Francis, I mean, you got to do something to win. And even, I know he was looking to counter if he's a counter striker, looking to counter off something that Derek gave him. Derek didn't give him anything. I get that. But you got to get in there. You got to get in there. So enough talking about that snoozer. And then Stipe Miocic versus Daniel Cormier. I did expect Daniel Cormier to win, but I didn't expect him to knock him out. In fact, it was a really funny moment at my house when we were watching it. We were talking about it in the first round, and I said, there's no way. I said, I think that DC will win, but there's no way that he knocks him out. I said, if he wins this fight, he has to win by decision. He definitely doesn't knock him out. And literally, like half a second later, he lands the hook. It was comical. Everybody started laughing at me immediately because it happened. It was like when Joe Rogan had said about Terry Adam getting knocked out. Like the timing was just so clear, and DC knocked him out. I mean, I did not expect that to happen. I thought that he would have to make a decision, and I was getting a little frustrated as somebody that was pulling for DC that he wasn't going for takedowns really or getting dirty in the clinch. But you could see that his strategy was there, and they had almost predicted that was gonna, or he said that he saw that Stipe in the clinch keeps his hands down, and that's what they expected to happen. To me, where the differences in this fight boils down to coaching. That Daniel Cormier has elite level, high level MMA coaches, and Stipe, I'm not trying to disparage his coaches, but it's not like the AKA camp. As much as I don't like those guys for whatever reason, they are an elite level camp with high level coaching. And Stipe trains at a gym in Cleveland. I'm sure they're great, but they're not Javier Mendez, they're not Bob Cook, and they're not AKA. And the other thing why I picked Stipe, and in my video I said I couldn't articulate it, and I figured it out later why I believe that Stipe would win this fight. DC, why I thought DC would win this fight. Who does Stipe train with, really, as far as who's going to make him that much better? So when he gets in there, I know he has training partners, and I know that he brings in people or he'll go to other camps. But if he's the best heavyweight in the world, who is there really pushing him to get better and better and better other than his coaches? For DC, that is Cain Velasquez, who he is saying is the best heavyweight, or at one point was the best heavyweight in the world. DC and Cormier are like, DC and Velasquez, it's iron sharpening iron. You have two people that are just making each other better. When they're sparring in the gym, they're sparring against the best. When they're wrestling in the gym, they're wrestling against the best. And when they're clinching against the best. And so you heard Stipe or DC say in the press conference, Stipe's got to work. I'm saying this as a friend. Stipe's got to work on his clinch game. But he doesn't have the people like Daniel does to work that clinch game against. And that's what has propelled DC to excellence. His coaching staff and most notably his training partner in Cain Velasquez. Those two make each other better. And it's for that reason that I think that they're likely 1 and 2 as far as heavyweights. Daniel's going to retire, and then it'll be time if we get a healthy Cain Velasquez. I'd love to see that fight, Stipe versus Cain Velasquez. I think that likely Cain is the number 1 or number 2 heavyweight in the world. It's a shame that we'll never see Cain and DC fight. They just won't, and it is what it is. And then you had this whole thing with Brock Lesnar coming in. Immediately after, I said, that kind of spoils it for me. I was pulling for DC to win, right? Because as much as I didn't really like him, I wanted this to be his. He's had this John Jones shadow over his head. And in a lot of ways, I almost don't consider him the double champ because in my mind, I kind of still consider John Jones the champ. I don't want to be unfair to him, though. Like, DC is the champion. I get that. But undisputed, he is the heavyweight champion. He did that on his own. It's his. He said he came in second at NCAA. He came in second or fourth in the Olympics. He's always been just short. Then he had the John Jones stuff, but he won that heavyweight championship emphatically, no doubts about it, by knockout, no controversy. It's his, and I kind of wanted that for him. And then at the end, I almost said, like, the Brock thing almost spoiled it for me. But here's where I am, almost 12, 13 hours later. DC's a massive wrestling fan. And it was so, almost fake and contrived, right? Like, Brock and DC are basically friends, right? Like, they text each other. When UFC 200 happened, Brock had texted Daniel Cormier and said Merry Christmas. It was July, right? He said Merry Christmas because he knew he'd make money. Like, they're basically friends. And so, there's some camaraderie there. I know they're sort of competition rivals through wrestling, NCAA wrestling, but they're basically friends. So this whole thing was pretty fake. Just to cut a promo, right? So when they fight, they have promo material. I get that. It's part of the game. And I said, I don't really love it because of how fake it seemed. And I said it almost spoiled it for me. But I kind of realized after, and I think it was maybe Chael Sonnen that was talking about this, that DC is such a wrestling fan that's like a gift to him. That to have Brock Lesnar, who I guess is the WWE champion right now, one of their champions, I'm not sure how that works, and to have him come in and do this sort of wrestling shtick with him in the octagon, and DC gets to do it back with his whole push me now, get slept later thing, which was an awesome line. That they could do that back and forth, and as fake as it might have seemed, it was almost like a gift to Daniel because he's this massive WrestleMania WWE guy. And you know what? I can appreciate that. If it's like him having his wrestling WWE moment in the highlight of his career, he gets to do what he wants, which is have this back and forth WWE style against Brock Lesnar. Sweet, cool. And it does give some pretty cool promo material for when the pay-per-view happens for the casual fan. And no mistake about it, those two will fist fight. It's not going to be a wrestling match. They're going to fist fight. And so as fake as it might have seemed, just to generate some revenue, whatever, they're going to punch each other at the end of the day. I think that fight will probably happen in March, and we'll see. DC says he wants 2 fights. He wants Brock Lesnar. He wants to fight John Jones again. I'd love to see those 2 fights. At this point, I'm a big John Jones fan. I'd be pulling for DC just because I'm tired of John's antics. I'm tired of him having that thing over Daniel Cormier. And for the first time in my life, I seem to be kind of a fan of a AKA fighter. So I guess anything can happen in this world. Anyway, I appreciate it. Thanks for watching this video and just tuning in after the fact. I'm going to be putting up some videos this week on the fights happening on the UFC Fox card, Jeremy Stevens versus Jose Aldo. And then I'm going to get right into UFC 227 because that card is fantastic. I hear they might even be moving Holloway Ortega. There's a rumor that might be on that card. But even without it, it's a fantastic card. So keep an eye out for those videos. I'm hoping to actually film them today. They'll come out this week, and we'll go from there. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Subscribe if you haven't done that, and we'll go from there. Thanks so much. Bye. Hey, thank you so much for watching this video. I really appreciate you taking some time out of your day to watch this content. I'm just a fan with an opinion and a camera, but I love the sport of MMA. So if you want to see some more videos, you can take a look here on the right of this screen. And other than that, I will catch you in the next video.